Okay, so I'm going to be offering my, I guess, thoughts or analysis on two games from Flexys POV that he ended up actually playing with me. I've done a few of these in the past and they've ended up taking a really long time, so I'm definitely going to split the two maps in this video into two parts. And then even though I did play this game with him back when it was played, I'm not quite sure. I don't quite remember when that happened. I did not watch these videos beforehand, so I'm somewhat, I guess, blind to what's going to be happening on the screen. So the first thing that I would note as I were loading in here, like let's say if I were playing from Flexy's POV, is that I recognize what map it is, obviously, everyone does that. Then I also understand that we are two duos playing a 4-stack, which is important to know beforehand, or like as you're loading in, knowing what the teams are kind of like, because information like this influences at least my decision making throughout the game. There are other things that could potentially be a little bit important, like ping. If I know my ping is maybe much better than some other players, I might change how I take fights a little bit, but it's really not as much of a factor as the players and then the party sizes, basically. And then I've played this 4-stack, well, these players basically in this 4-stack like a bunch of times. So I have a relative understanding of kind of how they play or their play styles. They're relatively crossing heavy. But I also know that they're going to be playing much closer together. They're going to have, of course, a lot of situational advantages because they're a 4-stack, and some of them play together a lot. Maybe all of them, I'm not sure. So I'd imagine they've built a little bit of not chemistry, but like they'll assume that their teammates are kind of going to play for teammates more for revives and team shooting and stuff like that. Definitely much more than we are. I don't know too much about Shadow. Reloys is decent, but ends up playing really weird when he's not with, or they're not with the players that they usually play with. I noticed that they sit on covers a lot with a shotgun out and are just trying to, they're playing very individualistically and not getting as much damage out. So I just kind of noticed that about them. They kind of changed the way they play, which makes sense. But yeah. So those are some initial thoughts, I guess, from just the stat screen.
Oh, this is gonna be a good one right here. Wait, what happened? What you saying? Thank you.
And I said that because Reloid's dodges like, I don't know, the vast majority of the lobbies he gets in, so it's pretty annoying. It just ended up wasting a lot of time. Okay, so Hill is top, and I would be going top to play the Hill and
Mad late.
Embar, the pickup that's up there. And Flexys should know that he's by himself. Got initial damage, 2v1'd. If he knew that there was a second player there, he'd either hard commit to backing up and just kind of giving them what they have, assuming, we're going to have an advantage on the other side of the map. So he wants to kind of like stay alive and be a nuisance or whatever. Or if he feels like he has a really good opening, if you can get a kill in a 1v2 and then trade yourself out even, you do end up getting value from that, like 9 times out of 10 or whatever, because you're what you're doing is, I mean, it depends on the values of the players, which kind of sucks. So the values of some players are going to be potentially a lot higher than the values of other players. So if you're like a really good player and then you take a 1v2 and you trade yourself with one of the 2 players, your trade, your one-on-one trade, or you both die, actually can often benefit the other team, depending on what that like skill discrepancy is. But in the vast majority of situations, if you trade yourself out in a 1v2 with one of the other players, you do end up getting value from that. It costs time for the other 2 players to kill you. So not only do you kill one, but then you're forcing more time to be used, basically, for the second player to kill you. So this is a little bit, I guess, unfortunate. I didn't really notice there was a second one there, but I also, as I was coming in, if I were in Flex's position, I'd have my screen turned down a little bit more and be looking around to see what numbers I have as I'm coming in. So definitely throughout the entire game, it's definitely a good idea to, in order to get more map knowledge and awareness of the game state, it's good whenever possible for at least yourself to keep track of what players have what pickups. So if I were to die in this position and I see a bunch of these pickups, I would make a mental note of who has what pickups. So I know that Patches has Embar, which is me. Cowboy got Drop Shot, which is who he's spectating. And then Reimato has frags. And I would also be looking around whenever you can to see where players are and, just to get information, which you're doing that the entire time anyway. But it's not this is important enough so that not only do you know for yourself, but if you were in comms with someone else, which I wasn't in comms with Flexys, or or not in a 4-stack where we're all comming together or whatever, it would be good to not only take note personally of what pickups were grabbed, but also can communicate that to the rest of your team. So you could say, Cowboy has drop, and then and Reimato has frags, and then you open up the scoreboard and you make sure that you know which characters they are. And sometimes in the ranked matchmaking environment, you'll have duplicate characters. So if that's the case, then if you state the ID like Cowboy and say there were 2 of Cowboy's characters on the other team, then you will have at least already have said what the name was, and then other players, if they're concentrating on other things, can at least hear without, even though they might not have the time to open up the scoreboard and look, but they can at least hear what the ID was, so they can go look at what character that was or that is. So that's why I'm a fan of vocally saying what the ID is, because it helps other players be able to verify on their own if need be. But if there's only like one Baird or one Karn or whatever that's on the other team, then you could also just make a note of that character having a pickup, and then you could probably say the ID and the character, or if you just want the character and then the pickup that they have. But what's also helpful is there are a lot of plays to be made, a lot of decisions that should be made proactively or maybe aggressively, depending on what players have what pickups. And it can make a really big difference in the game. So if you're in comms with anyone, That's why it's part of the reason why it's important for everyone to know um, who has what pickups. Because if they're taking like a 1v1 and then they know there's another player that's coming around the corner in the next few seconds, but they're in a pretty bad position, but they have the opportunity potentially to straight line a player that has a pickup, that could be worth it. And then they know, oh, they're going to be running away from me, so I'm grabbing map space and I have the potential of killing them. And if I don't even kill them, then at least I'm giving myself a look at killing someone that has a pickup instead of just sitting there for a few more seconds and then getting double teamed. So I can be proactive about this, right? Something like that. Or if you know that, like Reimato has frags, for example, if you recognize what character has frags and then you down that player, then you can use whatever's in your nade slot and you can meat shield Reimato and then get the two frags from them. If you know who that is beforehand. So there are a couple of reasons why, additional potentially reasons why it's good to know who has what. So spawning in here on the side of the hill, which is going to happen with a hill that's like in the middle over here. It makes sense. When you spawned on initial side, which also sort of makes sense. But what's kind of funny is that Mario, I guess, ends up being like right in front of the spawn. So that's kind of if this were to happen to me, I would be thinking, oh wow, maybe the entire COG team is actually pretty split right now, because if Mario's here and the other COG members are maybe somewhere in the middle of the map or something, then I the Karn or whatever myself probably should have spawned on the other side, flipped spawns to the other side. So because this happens and Mario's so close, it already gives me the thought that the COG team is probably really split right now, which, could be a good or a bad thing for you or the other team, depending on, the situation, right? Now they recognize that there are two players, and so now you're kind of in a situation where you'd kind of want to know where your teammates are. They're over on the hill, and then there are two players right in front of you, so this is really dicey. So now you're looking for, you're trying to keep cover as much as you can and trying to get efficiency. You have no reason to push forward on any of them unless you have a really good chance at getting a kill. But you can hold the cover, you can try to get slap shots or back A's or whatever. And then if they start pushing you, then obviously you'd probably want to try to calm that. And then either you'd want to try to back up and stay alive as long as possible, or look for an opportunity to try to get a kill and trade yourself out. To again waste their time in the 1v2. And I guess Mario ended up being like more in the middle of the map, so that was like another was a mark that was in a different place in the map. So that's kind of funny. There still ended up being two players here, so definitely know where at least three players are. But I because of this spawn, it makes me believe that there's a pretty good chance that the fourth player is like somewhere else, potentially blocking the spawn on the other side or something like that. And then all three of them ended up being here, so it's very interesting. So probably what ended up happening was someone on the swarm side was a little bit closer to this spawn than the other spawn, and so it defaulted to this spawn, even though the COG team was a bit closer to this side as well. Probably because they were rotating to the side, and then Swarm or Locust were rotating over to try to prevent pushes a little bit more, unless they would just give up the angle. But yeah, this is really tough. So held cover, went for back A's, slap shots or whatever. So that's what's happening right now, and getting good damage on the Lonnie. Got dropped, which actually gets a lot of efficiency. So not only are you sort of wasting the time of three players right here, I mean, it's not really a waste, but it's like the longer they spent not handling the 3v1, the more time that they're wasting, right? So potentially they could be wasting a lot of time, with 3 players versus just 1. But then they also spend a drop shot. So you're, probably just going to die, but it was a 1v3 and then you got dropped. But you ended up wasting a bunch of time, and they felt like they needed to use a drop for whatever reason in a 3v1. So you got a lot of value or efficiency out of that. And do end up dying from that. That's fine. And they're trying to rotate around this side. And yeah, this is pretty good, capitalizing on the damage when possible. But also remember, part of the reason why I was played so aggressively on the Baird Cowboy is because we know that Cowboy has drop. And even though they already used 1 drop, I had a really good chance at confirming them and then being able to probably get more value out of that. Arguably, I could have probably played a little bit more efficiently, or maybe just more passively, got the shot, maybe, might not have pushed forward to try to get the down and then confirm, but it depends on the pressure that I feel and then how much value I feel like I can get out of it, depending on, what's going on in the game. But I at least, are able to potentially, deny 1 drop shot and get a kill. And then I don't remember what it looked like from my screen, but it's possible that I felt like I had a really good shot at getting out as well, and keeping my M-bar. But arguably, depending on what it looked like, I might have just gotten the shot and then actually had rotated to the other side of the hill. So I stay really far away from the drop shot instead of playing forward. And I think in a lot of situations that probably would have been better, but it just sort of depends what's going on, right? There's also the added factor of the fewer players there are on the other team that are alive, the less effective their push would be together, and the more effective cover is when defending against a push. So that's another thing to consider. But I also probably had, maybe 4 M-bar shots or something, not really sure. Maybe 5. And it also depends on, how important I feel like those shots are in comparison to the drop, So there's just a bunch of things to consider in that situation. But right now, Flexys is sort of on like a flank route. And this is moving up these stairs here is pretty dangerous. There's no cover in this area. And whenever they decide they want to push, Flexys is, I believe, like completely on his own. So if they get a mark or don't get a mark and hear him, and then they say, oh, let's, fly at Flexys or whatever, because, you have to assume that we're playing a 4-stack with comms, they could, like, 2 or 3 man push Flexys, and it's difficult for him to stay alive and get out of this situation. In a lot of I guess a lot of times, because you don't have a whole lot of information about where the COG team players are. There could be one that's around here somewhere, just not moving at all, so you don't hear them. And then as soon as they hear like the Karn moving up here, then they're like, oh, okay, the 2 of us will go fight the Karn, right? Try to 2v1 him. And the Karn's going to have difficulty if someone's like maybe right here on the corner. Probably, like, potentially there's a good chance they'll die to 1 player, or they could just get 2v1'd. And then there's also a chance that he could try to back out, but then he won't be able to, and he'll die at the bottom of the stairs behind him somewhere around where frags are. So he has to be pretty cautious about what he's doing, because then his play of moving up here would have been probably not so great. Yes, it could waste their time potentially, and if he gets out down to frags and then back behind cover before they're able to kill them, in a 1v2, then that probably would have been pretty good because we're still getting points from that. And he was wasting the time of 2 players if he doesn't die, so that would be big. But there's also a pretty good chance that he wouldn't be able to if there's someone that's like really close to him. So this is like a tricky situation. You're just trying to like figure out what makes the most sense, right? He's got the mark. Yeah, felt the risk, I guess. Was hearing probably audio on the other side of the wall and recognized that he felt like he was in a tricky situation. Also, there were no audio cues or visual cues at all about them actually pushing the hill, which means there's a greater chance that they're all kind of around, or a lot of them are around that area where the Lonnie was that he was shooting at. So yeah, backing out and trying to get out of a tricky situation, which is good, probably. And we're rotating to next, kind of together right now. Mario, as far as we know right now, is on his own. We sort of, take a 2v1, so that was pretty good. Then we hear someone down here, and we're still sort of together, which is great. And then I end up moving forward because I recognize they're by themselves, and I feel like I absolutely have to because, again, I'm playing a 4-stack. I have to try to take every advantage that I can against individual players, especially when they're on their own. And since we had multiple people around that one player and I recognized they were by themselves, they're running away and they probably would have taken some damage. And so not only do I know exactly where they are and that they're a little bit hurt, but I'm pretty sure that I have to play, aggressively to try to kill them, to massively, undercut how strong their push would be for the next maybe 15 seconds or so, after they're killed, because it's the respawn timer plus the amount of time that it takes for them to get to anywhere that's significant. So, like, let's say if they spawn on the top left over here, this Bolthawk/Shock spawns, then it's the respawn time of like 8 seconds plus however long it takes for them to get up to around where the hill is, which is, maybe another 7 seconds or 8 seconds or something like that. But really, more importantly, it's like, I have a really good chance of getting a kill. And then once I do that, they'll feel like they can't push up as much and they'll probably wait for their 4th again. So it kind of stifles their push if one of their players in their stack is dead. And Flexys decides to come back to the hill, which I think this is definitely a good decision. It's just that now we're split, and I feel like I have a chance at maybe getting a kill. But I have to, try for it. And I end up getting it in that case. And then we know, or at least Flexys knows that there's 2 waiting for next. Waiting for the push for next. And then now he knows there's a 3rd one. There's Lonnie. But again, like I just said, they're down a player right now. So it's a 4v3. So they feel a little bit pressured right now to not push because they're down a player, which could potentially buy us more time to get in a position. Or the Swarm team anyway, to get in position before the COG team makes a push. Realistically, what the COG team should be doing is already knowing how many players are on this next and knowing that they're really close to the Karn, and even if there's another player here, they sort of have a 3v2. So this is like a pretty good opportunity for them to make a push, because if they end up waiting until the teams are 4v4 again on the map and Swarm still has this position, then a push against 4 players is much, much, much more difficult, significantly more difficult, even if they have their 4th player up, than it would be in maybe a 3v2 or 3v2.5, something like that. So they really, I rotated back over here, I guess, pretty quick. And so they might know that we have 3 players here, but it seemed like about 4 seconds ago or something that the COG team probably should have started kind of moving up a little bit and seeing if they could push down Mario would be pushing down here / here and then here. And then these two players who are on the stairs could have, about 4 or 5 seconds ago, started playing around this wide part of the statue to sort of try to get each other's reses. And then if they start moving up and then someone recognizes, oh, no, they actually have, 4 players here and we're taking a lot of damage or whatever. And then it's like, okay, wait, back up. And you have the ability to do that. You just need to have the understanding, the game sense, the awareness to know approximately how much damage that you're taking and how effective your push could be. Because it is risky to push forward when there's a chance that it could go awry and then your push dies. You can't. A lot of situations in Gears 5, because the weapons are really lethal. Once you start committing to something, you can't back out of it. But these players on the Swarm team are not. The team isn't as fully forward or on playing for next as they should be. There should be at least 2 players here. I had been coming around a little bit late, and as I'm moving up, I'm always looking for damage whenever I can. So as soon as I see someone here and then I move up to this spot and I recognize that they're not pushing up already, I'm looking for any damage I can. So I could have prioritized getting to this position, but I might have lost out on some damage. But I'm sort of like moving in this direction, trying to get around to where the hill is. Whereas this player and wherever the 4th is are very much more out of position. Because technically this spot is pretty safe, and there should be at least 2 players here that are playing this spot. And if the other team ends up throwing util, like let's say a flash to try to break up this cover, you get damage whenever you can, and when the flash is really close and about to explode, you move off to the side, you take the damage because the flash wastes 2 full seconds of your time while you're stunned, and also gives them a very obvious opening for when to push. So it's important to, even if you're going to take some damage, to not get hit by the flash. You move off the cover some, and because you're pretty far away from where utils are being thrown, it's really easy for you to dodge flash throws. You can also hear them pretty well. So you have like at least 2 players on this spot, maybe 1 around this area, and then maybe 1 like here somewhere. So you're sort of playing around this back, like in a U formation or so, and you're constantly getting damage whenever you find that you can. And if they are trying to get an angle, like say on this player, so this player that's wide, everyone on this team that has the position needs to understand that, because this angle is really important because it can push this player out. And also here, but this push on this side is much further away from here, even though their angle for crossing is much better here. But they have to be, kind of be similarly as wide to get shots on this player as they would on this player, and they'd be doing a bit more damage to this player. But this player is much closer to where the team is. This player is closer to where one of the push vectors are. So if this player ends up going down, they're really close to the side that the offensive team would be on. So the entire team here needs to understand that as soon as they start going wide here, that it's important that you prioritize damage on this side a bit more. Unless they're all playing, like 3 of them are here, 1 player's wide here, then it's like, okay, maybe we can get a bunch of damage on these players. We have a much better angle or look on them, and then as soon as 1 player goes down, maybe you can get a flash. That costs time. But as soon as you start getting downs on the players in the middle, then you usually have a bit of an opening to kind of do something here, and then the 1 player that's wide isn't quite as much of an issue. But if they're doing like 3 players here and 1 here, or 2-2, then this side typically gets a bit more damage priority until the 2 here make it up to like the statue. And then it's like, okay, if they're still around that corner and there are 2 here on the statue, and it's like you're kind of focusing on the statue until they up A. And then you go back to this side because they're wide. You're constantly figuring out what side is more important. So yeah, it looks like COG right now are waiting for their fourth / an opening, and now they have their fourth here, and so now they're like, okay, now we can push. So that ended up being the case. They didn't feel like they can push until they got their fourth, or they felt like it was better to wait for their fourth to make it up. The Baird was way out in the open there, and I'm trying to get as much damage as we can, but unfortunately they had 4 players here. We only had 1, and this spot was really good. You need, like I said, you need to have this spot, and then someone here is pretty good too, but then the other 2 teammates needed to be somewhere that was a little bit more proactive, somewhere where they can get some damage and or be close to a teammate to get a revive if need be, because we have the ability to theoretically deal more damage to them than they do to us, because we're the ones that have cover, because we're in a good position. So we should be dealing more damage to them, and if someone on our team goes down because they get crossed or whatever, we should have a significant amount of damage on them, even if it's spread between multiple people. The problem is this player is probably not doing that much damage. Maybe they got a decent amount of damage on Reimato or someone over there. But these 2 players are pretty good positions, and they need to be doing damage when they can. And then, of course, like I said, try to dodge flashes when applicable. But they had lost a player here because I'd pushed up on Cowboy and killed them, and then Cowboy spawned on short and moved up and then started the push with 4 players before these 2 teammates, neither of which had died in that time, made it up to around where the hill is. So they had plenty of time to get over here. They just didn't put themselves in good positions. And we still, from this perspective, we still don't know where that fourth is. We just know, that there's sort of like 3 here. So Flexys does get flashed. I get revived maybe by where the 4th player is, but they should have been closer to Flexys or in the back here. And so just like how I understand the major push vector for the other team to be, it's sort of in between where this line is. It's around the left side of the statue, like I said earlier, and in the back through these stairs. And so that's why I said that this position is really important. So if they start going wide, and you need to maybe prioritize a bit more, typically, the players who are more wide here, because they have a better position on the players who are in cover here, because they sort of have cover on this spot, but they're really close to this cover, which kind of contests where the hill is, and have a look at where these spots are around the left side of these covers. So we should have theoretically have had much more damage on this, but they were in position much sooner than we were, and they ended up getting a flash off, and they didn't take anywhere near as much damage as they should have, so they had a lot of free reign to make a pretty free push in this position. So not only is the Karn stunned here for 2 seconds and unable to do that much, I was also downed, and it takes about a second to revive, but usually people don't get instant revives, so this is like another 2 seconds or so, and then the other 2 players are actually more on the bottom of these stairs when they should at least, at the bare minimum, be on the top of these small stairs here. So they're just really way out of position. So this is a very free retake. Yeah, it ended up being kind of at the bottom of the stairs, and now all 4 of them, since they're around each other and together, makes it very difficult for us to feel like we can push forward, especially if, they're 2 randoms that I can't kind of coordinate with. And if I'm just playing forward, then I'm just going to die for basically no reason. They're not going to be interested in moving forward to try to play with me, probably. So now we're kind of playing cover here, and if they decide to play forward, then maybe we have an ability to get a pick while we sort of have cover. But it's the onus on them messing up to get the kills in a 4v3 situation is really on the COG team. Even though they maybe used a little bit of utility, it's still a 4v3. And arguably, what the COG team should have done is as soon as they took over the hill and got the kill, 3 of them should have stayed around the hill and just held their position, because the bottom of the stairs is not inside the hill. And one of them should have run immediately. Theoretically, the one that's closest to the short spawn run immediately to that short spawn to try to block it before the Karn gets back up. Otherwise, they'd be sort of in a bit of a pinch, which is partially, why it would be helpful for us to kind of stay alive, I guess, a little bit. But theoretically, they should have blocked it. Yeah, the Karn getting a little bit of damage and then feeling pressured to try to make a play when they have some damage advantage at all. And if they die here, then it's not as big of an issue, because they're likely just going to respawn with, the teammates, because the rest of the team, for the most part, is dead at this point. So they have the ability to maybe deny a little bit of points, get 1 kill, potentially even get another kill, also help deny the push towards to short spawn. So if the Karn is able to stay up when the players spawn back up and the rest of COG is, like, say, around here or something, the swarm side is almost guaranteed to get the spawn unless the first player that died in that last push was a COG player, and then it probably would have put the COG player here and then blocked it, probably. 99 times out of 100, the first player that died in that second engagement, I guess, or maybe first main engagement in the 4v3 would have spawned here at short, and then the other team, whichever team that was, would spawn at long across the bottom of the map. So potentially getting the kill hit here, denying some points, maybe getting a few more points, even if they die in a few seconds, potentially could be pretty big, even though it's just a 1v, in this situation. The Karn has the ability to potentially get and keep the short spawn for the team by playing up and then maybe winning a fight or two. And the COG team was, like, way off the hill for some reason. I don't know what happened. I think probably when they were taking their 4v3, the players on Swarm were sort of backing up or something and trying to sort of stay alive to waste their time. So if that was the case, then, that was probably really good. But COG shouldn't have given up their positioning anywhere near as easily as what happened. So, yeah, this is a 1v. At least a 1v, right? And then they hit the flash, so they have a pretty big advantage for pushing up. And then we did end up getting short spawn here, so they're actually taking extra damage from teammates. So there's every indication that this is a good push to make, and that it's important to try to kill them. And we kind of retake this. I guess they're setting up for drop. It's kind of hard to know because probably the TACCOM should be on much more often, I think, to have a lot more information about what's going on in the map. Yeah, and then looking for a lefty flip angle here is great. They used 1 drop, and we know Mario has drop. He used 1 drop on me, go figure. Ended up getting it down. We have M-bar, and the teammates has M-bar. Yeah, the Karn should recognize that they have 1 other drop and are probably going to have an active for whatever the next time is that they shoot it. So wherever they position themselves is important to try to give themselves or more time to potentially deal damage / deal damage and or dodge to the best of their ability the second drop that gets used that's probably inactive, whenever that may or may not be. And being at the front of the stairs puts a lot more pressure on them to not move up as much, depending on what angles Swarm has. But then backing up to the back of this hill means that it gives you and the Karn and the other team on Swarm more time to try to deal with that second drop shot. before they used it. Before they use it, because it's going to take more time for them to push up, right? So there are more opportunities for team damage to be helpful to kind of mitigate the value of that second drop. I'm picking up the drop or bolt talk. I mean, is pretty good as long as you feel like you have time. The bolt talk is, I mean, basically all the pickups in the game are really strong. Bolt talk is really, really strong. It's one of the stronger ones. Having the ability to headshot someone when they are, their health is reduced to 0, gives them from any range. So in a situation where there's a setup against a team that's pushing the setup, a lot of times the way that the team that's pushing the setup ends up winning is by more effectively using utility to reduce the amount of damage that they take as they're moving up, and giving them maybe more space and time to work with, but also as they go down, also getting revives. And the bolt hawk not only does a pretty sizable amount of damage, especially if it's active, but on a player who's getting revived, if they get a headshot on someone who's in a predicted animation, like say being revived, and they get the headshot on them and it kills them, then the 4v3 means that at really high level, you could basically already in that position with as the bolt hawk player, once you get that headshot and you get the gib, you already have your team going to try to block like short a little bit. I mean, you're still going to be trying to deal as much damage as you can and being in a position to do so, but you should already have, the one player that's closest to short should already be like slowly moving in that direction while they're kind of dealing with the push, because there's such a good chance that the push is going to get stifled just because they were down a player during their push from like the bolt hawk headshot, for example. So it can be really valuable, helpful. So they're already going to next, rotating, 28 or whatever, saving their drop, which makes a lot of sense. Depending on what space there is available, because they're a 4-stack and they're going to be generally on the same page or much more likely to be so. On this side, you have some decisions that can be made about when you would leave the hill, because you are given the flexibility and space to probably capture all the points if you want. The vast majority of the time you do want to leave early, but what makes things a little bit more tricky is that there are some other decisions that need to be made. So some considerations would be, one, that Cog still has, on Mario, still has 1 drop. So that might make you consider leaving earlier than you would normally, so that you have the time to push the hill at least once, assuming that the first push is going to die or not going to be as effective. And also, it also depends on where you want to push from next and how far away that is. So on this map is on the larger side of things. So it kind of takes more time for you to, at least in this situation, Swarm would want to be wanting to play for short spawn for next hill. So they prioritize over here, and then Cog may or may not want to slow down the push over here, depending on how many players they have. It's not going to be as likely that they'll have drop sitting somewhere to try to fight and deny or whatever, grabbing short spawn, because that kind of leaves them a little bit more open on the other side, even though at very high level that's probably what should happen. Because if Swarm ends up wanting to split like 2-2 and do a 2 push here and a 2 push over there, then the 2 push over there should just generally fail, because defending that hill and at 2v2 is really, really strong, even if you don't have drop. Just crossing, it's pretty open. So really you kind of want to like deny this area as long as possible, and then if they grab this spot, You could potentially get more value with the drop by holding it on the hill, but you could also get you could also run into a situation where if you have a good enough setup that you can hold the players in places where it's hard for them to move up. So for a very specific example here, if Cog has like rotated to grab hill, then you could have two players on where next would be, and then you'd have two players on or around where this block is on the like 2/3 of the way up the stairs to the left of this pillar, like halfway up the stairs. And then basically what that allows you to do if your damage is really good is significantly or give Cog a significant chance that even against two other players, a really good look at getting kills as soon as Swarm wants to push either around the back over there, then double cross Lancer damage is extremely good. And if there are only two players, they would not be able to make that rotation without losing at least one player in that situation. And something similar would happen if they're trying to hold the block and they're moving from, like, Swarm's trying to push from the pillar to the block. Then in that situation, the team that has the block has a lot of extra damage on the players that move up from like around the pillar area to the block. And it's a really good spot to defend from. So they, might be able to, in that example, if everything was coordinated and everyone's hitting their shots and playing, closer to optimally, they wouldn't even need to use drop shot to kind of prevent even two players from pushing up from around the short spun area. And you can kind of block by being around where that, that square cover is. So yeah. So those are some considerations, but now I recognize that, or at least in the Karn's position, recognize that Cog's split right now. So this is a really easy like 2v1 to push for, and you would get off, like if Swarm understood this immediately, they would get off the hill, which gives you a lot more time to push. They would 2v1 that player immediately, and at least on paper, kill them. And then they would have enough time to make it across the map while this hill is still neutral at like maybe 1 or 2 points left or whatever, but still be like on the other side of the map. And potentially if they win their 1v here, in potentially a 4v2 situation. And if they get away from the short spawn on current, then the Baird or Cowboy and or maybe this player over here would be forced to spawn across top, and they would be behind. They wouldn't be able to defend the next hill rotation. They should, so it would be great to like get that 2v1 and make it across the map. Either go up the stairs if this player wins the 1v and is able to look over the stairs, and if not, they would just switch around and then try to make sure that they at least block this spawn, so that that the Baird or whatever isn't able to spawn on short and instead spawns on long. They end up winning the 1v. This is a really big 1v. And now they have two players that are kind of preventing this push. So the Karn probably should have been off the hill a little while ago. They should have probably flown at the Baird, even if it was just by themselves. But if they weren't going to do that, then they should try to help push the Baird away to give their team a little bit more space to try to make a play somewhere else. So either if they push by themselves at the Baird and the Baird is able to get out, and there's no way realistically that they'd be able to get a kill on the Baird, then maybe they'd come back down and then try to hopefully help this player make a push forward together as two, because it's still really important to try to play down the bottom side of the map, because 5 seconds ago or whatever, you had 3 players across the bottom of the map. So that would have been what you're doing. And why it's important to leave the hill early is that really, so in theory, with the point system in control, the closer you are to winning, the better it is for you to trade points. So there's a little bit of a different calculation here when you're up, by like 50 points or so. Then it makes a little bit more sense for you to get a few more points because every point that you get that's closer to winning is incrementally more valuable. But we're still in the point where no team is going to be winning the game in the next hill or two. So it's still important to try to deny as many points as you can for the other team when it's still pretty early. If for whatever reason it was like 290 or whatever to 240, actually that wouldn't be a great example. It would be like a difference of 40 points or so, 40 or 50 points. So then getting closer to the threshold of like something like 30 points, because it takes about 30 points for a team to make a push after they get wiped. So it takes them like 8 seconds, and then there's like a stagger period, so it ends up being like something like 12 to 15 seconds, and then it takes them another like 7 seconds or so to get back into positions. That's like another somewhere around 25 seconds. You get closer to that 30-point threshold, then that's kind of around the amount of points that it takes or that you'd get after you wiped a team by defending. But if you're not at that threshold, then it makes sense to deny points for the other team, because that gives your team more chances at getting snowball situations. So right now, because you're not going to be winning, then the being higher up in score isn't as important, and it's a bit more important to kind of keep denying score from the other team, because that gives them kind of fewer options to work with, I suppose. So yeah, there's a little bit more of a calculation that's going on there. So if you were to choose between like gaining 10 points right now or reducing the other team's score by like 10 points, then right now it makes a little bit more sense to try to reduce the score that the other team could get by like 10 or so, because it kind of gives your team a little bit more options later in the game. So now I have like a 2v2. This player's kind of, well, they don't really have much information of what's going on. This player is kind of on their own. You don't know where Reimato is. And then there's another player that's trying to hold short spawn. Both of these players should be moving up right now to at least this spot, and then trying to get an angle inside here. So if this player stays around the doorway into lobby, then if any other swarm player comes in and has an angle on anywhere in lobby, they'll be able to mark and maybe get damage on them, and they'll be in a better position to move up through the doorway to try to make a play. Because right now, this person with Embar is not putting themselves in a good position to follow up on any damage or any opportunities that they have, and there are going to be much fewer opportunities to get a shot/kill on the player over here than there would be to get an angle to deny space or get damage on someone who's in lobby, who is much closer to where other players on the map that are on Swarm's team would be. So if you make it over here, then you're closer to Mario or this player with Embar, and you're also closer to this player and have much more of an angle inside this lobby area. And so you can maybe 2v1 or 3v1 or whatever, have much better looks or odds at killing the player or two that are in here if they stay in that position. And if they don't, because it becomes much more risky for them to be in there because they moved up, then you've just won more space by moving up. So this player is playing overly scared, and the Karn should necessarily try to be pivoting around where the Embar is, and then if they have an opportunity to try to play up and try to get a kill, then they can do that if they want. But both of them should have either pushed the Barrett up there or pushed down here and pushed the Barrett when they got to the lobby area over here and put um, put damage and kind of played for them spatially much more and sooner as well. Now the Karn is moving up, and then the Embar player ends up playing like a ridiculously overly safe. It can make sense in some ways to try to play across the top with Embar. You do potentially have some interesting angles that you can get. I'm not going to expect them to be looking for the very slight, like almost 1 pixel angle underneath the cover that's in front of where the next hill is. Almost no one knows how to do that, but being on the other side of the map from where the next hill is playing overly safe. They're not putting themselves in a position to help their team anywhere near as much. And the further away they are, even if they have power weapons, the harder it is for them to get as significant damage on them, even though the Embar at every range does 91 damage to a player with a non-headshot, right? So this player should have been playing forward, and they were like extremely just way overly safe, I guess. Maybe their awareness is bad, and they feel like there's a chance that there's a COG player here because the guy in the lobby like moved up. So they're like, oh, okay, maybe they're moving up there, but then I don't know why they're not moving it up behind where the Karn is. You kind of want to generally want to be playing earlier on this hill. You generally want to be playing for short spawn anyway. So by them rotating up towards the top here, they're like spending a lot of extra time not having an angle, but then they're also trying to maybe that like they're assuming that the main push is going to happen at the top, and you shouldn't necessarily assume that's going to be the case because you generally want to be playing for the bottom, unless it looks like the rest of your team is rotating for that, which I guess in this situation it seems like that is sort of what's happening. So probably that bear did end up rotating up here, but then they should recognize that they're on their own. And so them moving up to that one cover that's in front of the doorway here, it's putting themselves too close, way too close to the doorway where this player, probably the Baird, could straight line them and put them in a situation where they're playing for a one shot. And instead, the Baird ends up going for like this weird Lancer play instead of pushing them, which is probably bad. If you're going to start with a Lancer cross first, you can do that for a few shots when they make it closer to the middle. But as soon as they get a few shots, that's all the time that they have, and they need to be like flying to try to kill the Embar player. And they just sort of half-assed it. They got some shots. They're like, oh, okay, now he's going to go to cover. And then maybe they hear the Karn behind them, and they just like turn and to try to fight the Karn, which doesn't make sense to do. You want to push your 1v, even if you're in a 2v1 situation. Yeah, maybe the Karn recognized that this Baird player is up here. I don't really know from my position. But trying to help 2v1 this is good. But the other player needs to actually make some plays that are more sensible in the situation. So as soon as this player turns around to start fighting the Karn, they need to be like flying straight up and trying to get shots. And maybe if they want to play safe, they can start with a snub, or maybe they can charge the Embar, try to push pressure on them to move forward. But whatever the case is, they need to try to help with this 2v1. And then the Karn wins it, and this player wasn't really doing that much. And now they feel safe to go through the middle here, which is fine. You still want to be playing for short, making this push up here, especially when you don't have a lot of information on what's going on behind the stairs, is really, really bad. Because not only do you have like no cover in this entire area, but also whoever's defending on the top of the stairs has right hand from the top of the stairs all the way down. So this is like one of the most difficult pushes to make in the entire game because of how large it is and how little cover there is, and how you have the other team that could potentially have right hand, and even two players, having right hand close, and even another player that's on like the left side of the wall, but actually behind cover and can angle down here. So it's like a really, really bad push to make unless you're very sure that you can either push and get a kill, or you're forced to do that, or you have an extremely good awareness of where the other players are, and you feel you're pretty safe to move up. All right, so now we know that the other drop's been used. We want to make sure that we have short, because it looks like the swarm presence is over on this side of the map, and this player's already moved up significantly. It doesn't sound like they're taking any direct fire from the other team. So seems like there's a lot of space over here that you could get if you rotate over there. And then by the time you make it over there, you'll have your teammate will be back up. And so it's just a matter of, hopefully, if you get enough of this space, then you can get them to spawn here. Otherwise, they'll be forced to spawn up at the top. So you should have been going outside to try to grab short. Playing up here is bad, especially when you're down an entire player. There's no reason to play up here and hope that any of the COG players are going to try to make a push. And if they do, then they'll probably have 2 players to try to 2v1. And then you having maybe a small advantage on right hand at the top of these stairs isn't going to be significant enough for that advantage to be warranted, because you just should assume that they're going to use their main advantage here. And you want to, again, prioritize a short spawn relatively early in this hill cycle. Well, now we have a teammate, but you still have very little information about what's going on right here. So yes, they're probably going to be turned to be fighting at this player, but if you move up through this doorway, then you might have players here and on the hill, and you definitely know 100% without a shadow of a doubt that there's at least one player that's on the hill right now, and they have a lot of really good angles through the window and the pathway, the opening into this area, where the hill is, to angle out anyone that comes up through here. So even though you have a teammate here, the teammate was probably only trying to facilitate back up the player that's in front. And if they end up moving up here, and I think you might still have Embar, and if they do, there's a really good chance that they wouldn't be pushing up through here on their own. So if the Karn had gone outside the lobby and played for a short spawn, then that player that probably has Embar still would probably have backed up the Karn going to short spawn. But this is like a really dangerous push. Yeah. But it ends up being relatively free, which is interesting. It's very interesting. The COG's, I guess, playing very much around the hill. If we had like comms and had a lot more information about what was going on, and then, like, for example, this player who was taking this fight was able to tell his team, like, oh, I have a 1v, oh wait, I'm gonna win it, then the Karn and maybe the other player could have run up through here to try to save time potentially on the push. And it's actually funny because the Embar player actually went back to try to grab frags, but they could have moved up to try to, like, if this player might have gone down, then the Karn might have been able to come up and try to double team them or whatever, and hopefully save their teammate from dying if they were getting crossed and then were fighting a 1v or whatever. But that push, like, with not very much information, is very dangerous. It ends up working out pretty well here. Yeah, and then while you're moving around the back here, you should know that the fourth with the Embar is probably only around 2/3 of the way up the stairs, maybe. And so they might have an angle in a few seconds, but you don't really know how long it might take for them to get up there. But it's really important that as you're moving up, it's important to wait for teammates to get into position and have good angles. And at the same time, that gives you, in this position, the time to check corners and, like, look for players, so you can, like, turn your camera way off to the left and aim your camera downward some, so you can try to check this pocket, try to check to see if anyone's on the corner here, try to check to see if anyone's on the left side of this cover here, try to check anyone on the other side of this. Of course, there's a bit of a blind spot here that you would necessarily have, but if you turn your camera to the left on around this corner and aimed it downward, you'd be able to see a lot of this as you're moving around, and you're able to check to see how safe it is for you to move up and try to get an angle. And then at the same time, after you do that, you can probably have TACCOM up and then see where your teammates are, so that you have a much better idea of what angles they have and what they're doing before you sort of commit to moving forward here, because there could be a player that's like literally just doing the animation into the wall in this corner, or animation of the wall in this corner. Someone who's lefty flipped on this L cover that's in the hill on the other side of this wall, looking down this lane. There could be someone here that you don't really know about. I mean, their team should have an angle on that, but you can't say 100% for certain that there isn't someone there. So as soon as like three people or three players pop out and then start crossing, you get downed really quickly. So yeah, I'm like moving out over here is like pretty dangerous. You get back aid from a shotgun here and then cross from someone like right here. Maybe they slide to this wall and then get an angle, and they can get almost 2 points of damage on you. You could get like 2 pointed from shotgun here, so you're like pretty close to getting down pretty quickly. The damage in the game is really high, so you're just moving up slower and safer while trying to coordinate your push with your teammates being in good positions. And so now we have information on where teammates are. So I guess there's a shock, which is pretty good. We didn't check the other side of the window. We didn't aim the screen down and then try to look around, these covers and stuff. The Lonnie could have been here the entire time, and you might have been able to see them. And then if you decided to make a play here out of cover, you could have dodged getting absolutely bricked by at least this player. Yeah. Then I think Shadow right here has frags and is probably looking for frags. I'm moving up from spawn, trying to throw a flash. It looks like we're sort of set up, but it would be good, for this player to have a better understanding of where the numbers might be, especially when they don't have comms. So they have a really good shock placement that's blocking the push from the front door. So I end up rotating around and kind of helping the Karn. We end up getting a Gib kill. So we have a 4v3 right here. So this is absolutely a good push. But of course, there's like a bit of a tricky situation going on here where we want to spend the time to push our advantage. But at the same time, we don't want the first player in this fight to get short spawn. Because like I said on the other hill, the first player that dies, they have prioritization to getting short spawn. Whoever dies first, basically. As long as short spawn is open to them, the spawning system wants to give them the shorter spawn. So if the 4 swarm players are around here in this corner and 2 around the front doorway, then that short spawn is going to be available in about 8 seconds when this Baird is off re. So if we haven't pushed in and finished the fight in the next 11 seconds or so, then that Baird is going to be off spawn and is going to be able to get shots in the back and kind of get sort of a pinch. If it's not blocked. So this is where it's a little bit tricky, where you're a little on a small clock to try to finish up the 4v3, or try to get more angles and maybe get another kill, but then make sure you keep the short spawn blocked. So they have to go a further distance and they're not pinching while you're trying to retake. So we have a lot of space going on right here. There's a lot of individual fights kind of going on. And Alani ends up getting the 84 basically that they need. This push is kind of chaotic. Yeah, I'm trying to use cover to get damage as I'm trying to stay away from them because I'm hurt and give our team, more time to move up. But because probably the Baird had moved up by that time, I was pressured to give up this side that's closer to short because they have short, and I have to fly, try to get a one shot. But now this hill is very dead, and all the swarm should be trying to make it to pickups and or maybe more predominantly trying to get position on the next hill. And depending on how strong the next hill is to defend, like the more important it is for you to rotate early for it because of how strong it is to defend, basically. And that hill on drop on this map is one of the stronger hills to defend on. The other team has ways of breaking it up, but it usually takes a decent amount of time to do so. So the value of getting there earlier is higher. So this doesn't make as much sense to do. Karn should have tried to help run to next and or, play for pickups, depending on what's up. Not really sure. But try to help the team get priority for the next hill. So even though you have cover on a player that's moving here, you could also get 2v1'd. It's entirely possible. And then you could feel like, oh, well, then maybe I'd be able to recognize that soon and then be able to roll away and then get out before I get 2v1'd. But, if you deal damage to a player here and then you move up on them, like in this position, you don't really have as much information about whether a player is here around this corner, and they could be flying towards you. And you could get, pseudo 1v1, and then the one player backs up, and then the other player takes their place, and then you get sort of like 1v5 or 2v1, just in a staggered way. But the priority is playing for next. Yeah. And they already have 2 players over there. So the more players that we have on the swarm side to try to retake next hill, the faster and more efficient and more effective the retake or defense or whatever you want to call it is, our fight would be on next, because they have one player that pushed off the hill, then there's another player that's on the hill. So the max that they could possibly have on next is 2. Which is what you could see because they ended up being marked several seconds ago. But if you're able to fly down there, then you could make the rest of the team feel much better about taking the 4v2 fight and killing those players. But there's almost no value of holding here because they're likely not going to be playing this side. They're going to be wanting to try to play, around this area because it means it's closer to where their teammates are, and it's the shortest and safer option for them to make a rotation around to try to help fight for next. There's not going to be as many players who come off the hill and are like, okay, our team has short because we were just spawning there, and hill because we've been holding it for a while, and if we tack on, we can see we have 2 players on next already, and feel like, yeah, it makes sense for me to go through the middle of the map here where there are a bunch of corners and angles, and I don't have any teammates over here, and there could be a bunch of swarm here, and there's no reason for me to make this push. And the Baird maybe sort of recognized that. Maybe they felt confident about taking a 1v fight or whatever. Maybe partially because it was, the right hand, or they had right hand on those corners, but they gave it up pretty easily, which makes sense because there's no reason for them to really play that, because they have all of this in the back of the map and can rotate around, and they have no reason to cut through the stairs either, because that's dangerous for them, even though it's stronger to hold than it is to push. But yeah, they have all of that corner of the map to work with, so there's no reason for them to be rotating through the middle. So yeah, that player should not be secret manning there. There's a fight that's happening over here. They're doing nothing that entire time. At least the Karn is making it up to this doorway, even though it's a bit late to try to help the fights that are occurring over here. There are no fights occurring on the stairs, and there shouldn't be, because again, that push is pretty bad, and you know that Cog has all of the space on the outside of the building around this area. So this player is doing nothing basically. And now they're moving up about 15 seconds later. So, but we're you're kind of playing this angle and now have a bit of a good setup because the fight was won over there in the sort of the 2v2 situation. So now you have more space, and now the players have rotated around to where they should be. Having this doorway is really nice when there's no one here and probably no one wide left in the building. So having this right hand is really good, because this push from this lane up to like the doorway or in through the center is another angle they could have. But if you have right hand on this doorway, as long as you're not being crossed from this right side over here somewhere and angled wide on the stairs, then this spot is really good to have, because it's right hand on all of this and also one of the main routes that they have to try to flank or push forward. So at the moment, this is a really good spot to have, but as soon as you recognize that you could get singled out or angled or whatever, then you should be reevaluating their position here. But right now, with the setup that we have, is like 3 people around next and then 1 person here. It's really strong. But yeah, you need to be very cognizant of if or when you get flanked from the side, and there's no reason to have Nasher out here. As soon as you recognize someone is pushing on the wide left, which you'd be checking every the third of a second or so, you shoot some shots here and you're listening intently on your left side, or you shoot some shots and then while you reload, you're looking left and trying to hear. The more direct your screen is towards where players are, the better audio you'll have in that direction. So as you keep moving your screen left to the stairs or to the inside of the building, the better your audio cues will be from players who are moving from that direction, instead of it being 90 degrees to your left or even maybe behind you a little bit. If they're cutting through lobby from this side and you're angling on the right side of where those 2 players are outside. So you would have Lancer out. You keep crossing when you feel like you have an opportunity, but a lot of times you're not going to get that much damage. And while that's happening, you're also checking here. So while you're not as soon as you get a little bit of damage, you can maybe wait to reload a little bit. And then you start the reload, you're looking around because you're not able to deal damage. So you're just looking around while you reload, and you'll be much more aware of if or when someone pushes from the stairs here, maybe to push you out, or through potentially even the middle of the building. And then you'll still have your Lancer out and you'll be reloaded, and you can just lefty flip and cross and mark for your teammates this player that's over here, because this push from the first area of the stairs down to the doorway where this position is pretty long. You'll have a lot of damage that you can get with the Lancer before they get into an area where they're starting to really aggress and force you to maybe even back up or just swap to the shotgun. But you can have a lot of damage on them. And if you're holding your lefty flip or whatever on the corner where they would up A, and you're ready for that, and you have your bloom reset at that point, you can easily get them 4-point if they do some kind of pseudo straight line towards you. And if they don't do that, it takes the distance between them moving over to behind the T cover and to where you are right now is pretty similar. They have a little bit more space here. They have some walls that they can do some dodges and stuff, but you can get so much free damage on them if you have a Lancer holding the left side of this corner. And if the other players, try to push up at the same time, you should have, 3 teammates that are ready to shoot them as soon as they start moving around. So even if you die here, you could get a lot of damage on them. And hopefully, your team will be able to, because you have 3 players on your team that are close to you, be able to deal with these other players that are coming out of cover. So definitely having a Lancer out here is really good because of how much space you have. You're not really as pressed to have a shotgun out. But maybe there's a difference in the amount of damage you feel like you can get with the shotgun compared to the Lancer in this situation. And maybe that's part of the calculation. But for me, it's like absolutely still having a Lancer out. And then you back up here, kind of give up this wall. And that's not the worst thing. You're trying to stay alive, but the knee-jerk reaction of having a Lancer out in that spot, or swapping to a shotgun in that spot, is a little bit interesting because it's also a very good position to have. And as soon as they start moving maybe across the stairs or whatever, and you have your lefty flip, they can be moving down the stairs, but you can be getting damage on them. And then as soon as they make it around this area, you could swap to a shotgun and then maybe slide to some cover that's behind, but you've already gotten a lot of that free damage that it costs them to actually start moving up on you. And we only saw 1 player. So you're just giving up a lot of free damage here, potentially. But yes, this position now, when they're on the stairs, is also good. But you're not in a position to help out teammates outside as much. You're putting yourself in a position where it's a little bit easier for you to contend with the player that moves up to these stairs. And if they move down, you could get more damage on average against them and have a greater chance of winning the 1v. But you're much further away from teammates and don't have anywhere near as much options of shooting the other players that are outside, because now your angle inside is kind of only on teammates or in front of the teammates' cover. So you're taking out all of the potential efficiency you can get by helping outside, and instead gaining just a little bit of the advantage that you already have on this inside 1v. And it would have been really great. Theoretically, you could have gotten a mark before the smoke went off. But if you got a mark on that player, it could have been really good too. Yeah, so we you hear him sliding on the left. At least I do. I don't know what audio equipment are being used right here. Getting damage on the player outside is really good. But you just kept backing up off the wall, and then there's something really important with crossing. So because of the damage cutoff with the shotgun of dealing up to 84% with 1 shot, there's a lot of value that you can get from actually just dealing at least that minimum of 16%. And a bunch of players, if they're a little bit further than 84, can be getting an 83, but players are generally pretty consistent at getting much more 84s than 83s. So if you can at least get 16% on every player that you cross, then that's a damage threshold that's worth a lot, because it helps other players be able to, get that like 1 shot down or whatever, quote unquote, because the player's within that range to, get down with an 84 shot that's outside of give range. But spending more time and shots on that player needs to be an additional calculation. Additional calculations need to be made because it's not quite as valuable, right? Especially if you're in a bit of a more dangerous situation. So if you get the 16% and then you get a few more shots, that might have taken too much time from you in your fight to have given you the time needed to use an advantage that you have. Maybe in this situation with your 1v on the player that's moving down to your cover on T. So my knee-jerk reaction, like here, was already like trying to spam and get mark, especially when I saw that he had smoke out, was about to throw a smoke. And if you get a mark on them and they end up pushing while you have them marked, then they feel like they actually have a lot of freedom to go through the smoke, and or hoping that you don't have them marked, and you could get a lot of damage on them if they are marked. But then when you turn and you're like, okay, I'm not getting significant damage on this player anymore. Let's see if I can help out outside. Then as soon as you got a few shots on this player, would have swapped to shotgun and then immediately played for the 2v1 or 3v1 or whatever it is with teammates, because I'm now at a bit of a disadvantage theoretically against this player that's sort of in a 1v, because they have a much better understanding of where you are, even though there's a smoke there. Then because you're actively crossing, then you knowing where they are, even though you like heard them slide. So as soon as you heard them slide, you have a much better understanding of where they are. But then you would know that they're already on that cover and they have that cover advantage, and you wouldn't at this point. But you get the 16% on another player that's that you're pinching basically in this small snippet of time. But then you can swap to like your shotgun or whatever, and then try to push your advantage behind them and pinch. And if the player that's behind you, tries to push you, then even if you go down, hopefully your teammates would be able to help out. Because you're now, you should immediately understand right now that you're at a disadvantage compared to this player that's pushing. So right there, I would have my knee-jerk reaction was to swap to a shotgun and not be turning towards this player at all. I'd be flying towards hill. So I'd get closer to teammates. And if this guy wants to keep pushing me, then even if they're able to down me somehow, maybe they are pushing up here and then they up A and go like this way. Then as you're turning, hopefully you'd get one shot off, and then maybe you'd be able to roll, and then you'd have them like 2-point maybe, and then you'd be close to teammates, and the teammates might be able to get the rest of the damage that's needed to kill the player. But swapping to a shotgun, then taking this 1v fight, they actually had, not only did they have the time to get to this spot, which is, inside the smoke, so it's, tricky, but, we could say theoretically, you could have been marked or whatever, and they could have this cover, but they made it all the way to this side on this right hand, and taking this 1v fight is like a much lower success rate. They don't even need to up A here. They could just, shoot. And then as soon as you start moving away, then they can try to chase up on the damage. But the only reason why they feel like they're pressured to push right here towards you is because they're down players. They're losing that fight outside. So they're like, okay, this is a 1v right now. So they're flying at you because they feel like it's a 1v and they need to take 1vs while they're down players right now. And so that's another reason why it would make sense to try to conserve your life, because you're kind of denying what they feel like they need to do at the same time. Yeah, and they not only did they up A, they were like playing for a one shot. They didn't like up A and then shoot and be like, oh, I'm up a shot right now and I'm going to try for, my 2-shot. They just like went for a gib. And so now they have the inside, and now they have 2 angles. And so when you have 2 angles on a push, the success rate of pushing goes up quite a bit. And thankfully, because Swarm actually had gotten some kills, they had the space to pick up drop, which helps obviously for subsequent pushes. But they're kind of in a pinch right now. So if they're able to get an opening to push forward with their pinch, they could put a lot of pressure on the drop shot player. Which they did, because they recognize they have a bit of an opening. And if the Swarm team is able to kind of get back together and then use their drop, then they're forced to make an entire team push to use one drop, to like waste one drop. But because there's a staggering on both sides, but they now actually have the man advantage after they won the 1v fight inside, plus the pinch from 2 angles, they felt like they needed to push that advantage with the small amount of time or window that they had to put a lot of pressure on the players that are around hill and the drop shot player before they could get inactive, slash have the space to get a more efficient or effective shot off. So they did that, and it was successful. Reloids had drop shot, and they were able to get the down and push forward and get the kill. So now drop shot's gone, and you kind of know that you're in like a, several player down situation. You took damage from the left side. You see this player. You have one player in front of you. So now the decision is either to move forward immediately and try to get a gib on a player, and if you don't, that's fine. You can like respawn around with your team, or you could try to stay up and try to hold the T cover inside of the lobby area, and then maybe if your team spawns up on a side of the map, and or they'll rotate around the side of the map, then you can try to retake with your pinch, which is probably a bit more preferable in this situation. So yeah, hopefully, you'd be able to know which character has drop and relay the information. And now we're all on we're congested on one side and they have drop shots. So that's that sucks. To kind of not only retake, but have a much better success rate at forcing drops to be used, and or have a look at killing a drop player before the drop gets used in any real way or real effective way. You again, want to have space, because they'll have, if you're pushing from one side, they don't even necessarily need to have an active drop to get a lot of value out of it. So that's part of the reason why having players that are more spread out is good. So they don't need to pay attention to multiple directions, and they're not getting crossed from multiple angles. All they need to do is kind of watch one lane, and as soon as that lane starts getting pushed, they can put a non-active drop whenever they want, anywhere. Yeah, now we're down players, trying to... Yeah, this is a pretty good opportunity to try to make a play. We're down players, and if you give them time to kind of set up, then if you're on the other side of this cover, like on the right side, they can easily try to angle or just keep you off hill. So by pushing up here, especially when you got a hit, theoretically, got a hit with a flash, 98 or 99 times out of 100, when you get a hit mark with the flash, it does mean that they're flash, but sometimes, the 1 or 2% of the time, they're not flash. Maybe it's more rare than that, actually, but you just assume that they're flash, then you try to make a play here. So you're putting pressure on them, potentially denying points by contesting the hill, giving your team a look at trying to break the setup. But you do kind of want to put pressure on them. And after the first shot from the corner, you're kind of staying there around the corner, and you're kind of giving them time to do whatever it is that they want to do. And so in this situation, it meant that the drop shot player felt like they could use the drop, right? So you could have alternatively pushed them away from the corner. They felt like they had to go to a teammate, and you're like, okay, well, I know the drop shot player's on this this cover, or now I might have access to that cover if no one's there where the drop shot came from, like on your left. This cover, you push them away, and so either you're flying at the 1v2, or you could be like, okay, maybe I can get position. And so you could try to play for this wide area over there. And that probably would have been, a better thing to do instead of going straight at the 1v2. Because that's part of the reason why when you got your second shot off, you're like, wait, I don't want to go directly straight line them because there are two players right next to each other. And I don't feel like the success rate's worth it to me. And it's like, okay, then at that point, it's like, there's no reason for you to be standing on the corner. You could be trying to put pressure somewhere else. And in that situation, if you had flown directly at, hindsight 2020 a little bit, but the drop shot player doesn't necessarily have to be there, or no player necessarily has to be there, although they should have that spot. You could instead be taking a 1v or some kind of pseudo 1v on this cover, as opposed to straight laning a 1v2. But yeah, now they use that drop, and I'd imagine drop is gone at this point. Of course, if you've been TAC-comming, you'd be able to see what the the timers of all the pickups and everything are off spawn. I still have no idea. I just tapped it for a split second, but wasn't looking, towards the middle of the map, so couldn't really get any information off that TACCOM tap. But we do, we know we have all 4 players up, and now we know we have a kill, so there's a 4v3 on the map. And then trying to retake or grab hill from this top area is pretty good. Obviously, you don't have hill from this side, but you have a lot of options of winning the fight if they do have next, if you were trying to take it from this side. It's a little open in this area on this side of the next hill, but basically everything else is pretty good. So you have some pretty good looks at throwing a flash from one side diagonally to stun or flash players that are in the pockets on the left and the right side. So if you're on the opposite diagonal from the bottom of the stairs, you can do that. If they're on the other side of T, you can do the same thing with flashes, and it gives you a lot more room to work with. It's theoretically not the greatest thing in the world. Again, when you want to retake hills, it's not always you usually want to have 2 angles that you're pushing from or crossing from to try to retake, but all pushing from this side isn't the worst thing in the world. It would be a bit better if you could recognize where the players were if they have next, and to try to swing wide or whatever and get 2 different angles. But having this center area is a great first step to retaking the next hill. So at least having this side is good. So now you're checking to see where their players are, looking for numbers. We now know we have M-bar, know where 2 players are. This player's throwing their life away completely. They, yeah. You want to stay alive, yeah. I've used your flash. I guess the idea was to try to help your teammates stay alive. It's not the worst thing in the world, but there wasn't a very clear goal for the use of that flash. And now they have much more of a solidified setup here, and I guess they have one more drop. So I guess Reloids ended up dropping drop with 2 shots in it a while ago, and then Just Sutin used 1 for that 1 attempt to retake, and I guess still now has 1 drop that they're waiting to use. And Shadow goes down with M-bar and is dead now. So potentially M-bar was dropped in the ground, but we have no idea. This player felt like they had the space to move up and then try to somewhat take the 1v. There was absolutely no reason for them to do that, especially when they were already down at least 20% or 1 point in damage. As they were moving up, they were getting crossed. So I don't know what that was about. And so I guess other players have opportunities to move up and take fights, and they ended up winning fights. So now you're, up in players. So yeah, that's good. So now there are 3 dead. There's only 1 up, and I guess the Lonnie's here on the stairs, so we heard them. Okay, maybe they're over here to the right somewhere. Yeah, M-bar was dropped, but now we know that this player or me, or I have M-bar here. I'm interested in taking this fight because don't need them to have top control. I'd want to keep top control. Also, they were by themselves, and I think even while I have a power weapon, I think if I'm able to take a lot of really good fights on right hand, I'm still inclined to do that. I feel confident in doing that, and I kind of need to against a lot of 4 stacks. But in theory, it would have been much better for the Karn theoretically to have played forward more and been more of a front man, and then let the other player that has M-bar kind of play clean up a bit, but at least be close together, right? You know. So yeah, we won the wide side, got a headshot with Embar. So we're up in players right now. So we do want to be kind of pushing, you know, our advantage while we have, you know, advantage on the map. So this is good, playing forward aggressively, trying to take a team fight here. This is good. Yeah, get the re immediately. Yep, ended up having space for to play for the one shot. Yeah, getting the re again. They're super 4-point, but because they're so if this were like a 4v4, like a 4-stack versus a 4-stack, then even though they're super hurt, playing up for the rest of the damage here is a bit risky, and you're kind of so you could just sort of assume that you could take. There's a really high chance that because they have cover, they might be able to dodge a shot, or you might miss, or something like that, and they have a look at a really good brick. If you miss, then they have a high chance of killing you. If you end up moving up and downing them or killing them or whatever, then there's a chance that you get shot from some other angle and sort of trade out. So you might get the down, or you might get the kill, but then you might also go down at the same time. And what you're doing in this situation is kind of giving up hill position. So you did end up getting a lot of damage on them. But the other side of the coin is that you have hill, which is getting points, and you won the space already in the time to kind of roll the dice a little bit to try to push the damage advantage that you have. And this isn't like the most wrong decision in the world, especially if the other team is a better team, which they're a 4-stack and your side isn't. But it's just, this isn't as super clear cut as, oh, I have an advantage, I absolutely have to push it right here, because you still have hill control, and it's possible that I guess hindsight 2020, team ended up spawning behind them, so it's they potentially could have made it up wide, especially if you got a mark on them, could have gotten wide, and then they might have still been like 1 point or something by the time they got over there. But made the play to push forward. It ended up giving up space on the hill for it. That's a really good reverse up A. But you end up feeling like you needed to play back up on the hill again, so they end up fighting kind of with cover, especially initially. They just ended up missing their first shot, basically, and then they moved up, and you took like a Lancer shot or two, and then they got like their 80 point shot or 80% shot or whatever to get it down. All the swarm are together right now. Wanted to try to stay up a little bit longer. I mean, the teammates should have been playing forward here. Shadow needs to be playing forward. Shadow's been playing extremely passively like the entire game, like away from teammates. But yeah, I had no, like when you're in, yeah, playing up wide on this player is absolutely the decision to go for. You need to be wide on this player, and this should be a kill. There's just really low damage on them, and then you move up to this corner, and now it's like, okay, I need to keep this cover, and as soon as they start moving up, then you want to try to get a really good shot off on them, and then maybe back up. The rest of the team should be moving up here, absolutely. But you don't really have much information about what they're doing as you're sliding in here. Yeah, and hopefully you get the shot to confirm that. That would have been really nice. But moving off to the left here is definitely giving them a much better chance at getting the confirm on you before you get teammates up. So my knee jerk was to try to stay alive a bit longer for
I fuck.
teammates to get up, and because I mean hindsight 2020 here, right? I mean when you turned around, you saw their teammates took a little bit longer. That just ended up happening, or ended up being the case. But they should have been moving up sooner. It's just that um, I think it does make sense when you're playing with randoms to try to give them a little bit more leniency, I guess, and that was sort of where my knee jerk reaction came from.
What's wrong going on with my headset? Yo, popularity. Fuck you. What up, though? My headset is like fucking losing audio.
So this hill just started, 75, spawned on short. This is huge. You want to keep short for now. Wait for, things to kind of make sense. You have a player that's moving up here. You actually have an advantage on this fight in like a 1v situation from here to there. You want to keep short because it's really early on, so the short's worth a lot. So it's absolutely a good thing to hold this for the moment. And they decide to move up. Pushing them is a little bit tricky, and in order to do so, with my knowledge and experience, I would say that in order to push them, you'd want to be up like at least 2 points of damage. They deal like 40% at least to them before you try to make that play, and then maybe the first shot you try to dodge or something so that you'd only take like a little bit more damage as you start making it to the cover to make the push worth it. But pushing here requires a lot of damage to kind of do so, or a flash, right? If they get flashed, then you have enough time to get up to the cover in 2 seconds and then get a shot off. But for the moment, yeah, and this player is going to feel a bit more pressure to try to play for this because, again, it's worth a bit more. But you want to, hopefully, as they move up, try to start your fights with a damage advantage, obviously, because you have position on them. So you would have wanted to try to get a bit more damage on them as they move up. And if you were ready for their up A with the Lancer and you're able to cross them not only when they up A, but when they moved towards the bottom of this cover, the bottom of the stairs, you could get at least the 2 points of damage, plus you're closer to them than they were before when I said that you'd want at least 2 points of damage on them behind that cover for that push to make much more sense, have a much higher success rate. So that makes this position much stronger. You actually have, so basically, if this player at the bottom is 2 point, because you have height on them, if you move up on one side and then try to trade out some spread on them to keep them hurt, you could take a pretty good shot, but you have the ability to get back to cover before like their next shot is up, basically. So you, even though you're trading more damage because they're already pretty hurt, you're trying to keep them hurt so that if they do push up, you only need one decent shot when they get closer to you, whereas they would need one really good shot as you move wide to keep damage, and then one really good shot again when they move up to the top of the stairs here on one side or the other for them to get the kill on you. So it still makes sense when you're trading that damage to try to keep them hurt. It also makes them much more uncomfortable, and there's a really good chance that they'll feel like they need to back up as well and give you even more space because you're kind of winning that fight. And then you go back to having your snub or lancer out and then watching where they are in the cover, and then as soon as they up A, then you're already getting a lot of damage on their up A, right? Again, just like before. Yeah, these end up being like wide shots. It looks like you're playing with like really high dead zones. It's like when you're moving your right stick, it like moved over really quickly. Yeah, and they feel like they needed to play up this entire time. They felt really pressured to do that. They didn't have like a lot of damage on them as they were moving up, so they felt like they had more space to push. And then they move up on the right hand, which that's part of the reason why when they moved up to the bottom of this cover, my knee jerk basically is not only to keep them damaged, but when you do that, to try to do it from the left-hand side. So if they do up A, then you have a chance of maybe even getting them down with a brick, if you hit them with a brick. They do have right hand on that cover, on that side, but you're up in damage a lot there, and they're much more likely to try to push on that side because it's right hand. So you're kind of ready for it as well, which means that they'll feel less confident about doing that. If it's obvious that you're more in a position and ready for taking that fight when they're down in damage, because they know as soon as they move up, they could take a brick or a partial spread, but only get 50% or something on you, or less usually on average. But you're already ready for their push on their right hand. But now they won shorts. The short spawn. I guess the rest of the other team is trying to make the push here. Shadow again playing back really far. Like I said, once you get at least 16%, you want to seriously consider moving up, because your follow-up damage isn't going to be as valuable for each individual player, as that first initial 16%, unless you know they're really hurt and then they only need 1, 2, 3, 4 shots more for them to go down. But if you don't have that damage knowledge, then being closer to teammates to get more damage and to take more pressure off teammates is better, usually. So you're pretty much moving up with a Lancer out and then trying to get some initial damage to not only keep them damaged, but to hopefully get at least that 16%. And then keep moving up in between those. And you could still have a Lancer out, but you don't want to be constantly crossing or being proactive about crossing, because there's no guarantee that any player is going to pop up over cover or around cover so you can keep damage on them. They could just keep themselves in positions where you can't get follow-up damage, and then you're further away from teammates than you could be otherwise. So it looks like Shadow is super overcrossing. As soon as you saw the one player on the left side, behind this wall, then that damage seems like it's probably worth the time. But as soon as they moved away, they need to be ready to start moving forward immediately. Because all these, both of these players, the Karn and Shadow, both on these sides, they're getting some damage, but it's not very significant damage. And the value that the other team has in getting one revive is worth so much more than the amount of time that it takes for these two players to be crossing generally different people as well, to get damage to be able to move up. Yeah, you're not. Yeah, no significant damage. You move up. You just move up. But now you lost this player, so you're losing a lot of space that's really close to you. So as soon as that happens, you need to be ready, basically, for any pushes that are pretty close. So you should not be crossing here. Just maybe swap your shotgun and then back roll or whatever, because you just lost a lot of space right here, and you're not ready for this. Any players on this side. So Shadow ended up moving to them, and you got right next to you two. And if you have the time, it would be really cool to get a shot off. And if you can get a brick on this player and revive, that could be worth a lot, because you could potentially trade this player out, because they'll probably get the wrap shot or the double up A or whatever. But then hopefully you can follow up on that one shot that you're up. Yeah, that was good. Still ended up taking probably an extra 100 milliseconds or something to revive the player after the shot. You want to do it immediately. Ended up backing up away from them a little bit too far, it looked like. But then obviously, you just assume that this player, if they're not going for that, then they're waiting for the revive so they can give them over the top. But then you really want to be playing for your follow-up shot. So you're already priming, I need to double up A or up A and then back A off this, wall or whatever, and try to push my advantage on this player. Yeah, there's the wrap. Yeah, absolutely go for that. And then, yeah, this teammate was able to get a lot of damage on them and get the revive. So that's huge. They back rolled. It got the kill on them. They got third downed. And now we have some space to work with. Now it's a 2v2 at the most because 2 players just were killed. Heard the huffing of my character, so you should know that that character is pretty hurt. So you should consider that before making a push because 2 things. One, if you end up pushing forward and this player's really hurt, they're not likely going to be wanting to play up with you because they're still really hurt. So you should assume that it's not going to be very likely that you're going to get revived quickly if you push up into this area. And then the other thing is if they get angled out somehow and they go down, if you end up pushing forward and you're further away from them, then it'll take even longer for you to get over to that player to revive them. Right, so this player, me, ended up making the decision to move up closer to the teammate to try to help them because it looked like they were going to make a push. So that sort of ended up working out even though it was a little bit dicey. And now we really want to be trying to make a play here because it's sort of a 2v1. And now it's like a 3v1. Yeah, now 2v1, but we don't have much time because now we're starting to get down in players as they're rotating faster to this hill than our team is. So we need to win these fights really quickly. Yeah, good spot, and yeah, swap to some cross thing. Yep, very good. Keeping space, yeah, and then knowing where they're going to up A and then having a Lancer out. You still want to have a Lancer out here. If you get more damage by far with a Lancer on a player who's up Aing on the left or the right side here. But holding in this exact spot is really good because you have a pretty good angle on this up A and you have a good angle on this up A. But having a shotgun out means that you'll get less damage on average than a Lancer as long as you can, especially if you know which side that they're going to be up aiming from. And you can already sort of be pre-aiming it with your screen or even by holding LT and you're just waiting for them to move. So yeah, I got one decent shot and they moved up, missed the second shot. So that means that they're going to start regenning a little bit because it takes about 2.5 seconds for the players to start regenning. So now you know that even if you hit your third shot as soon as possible, they'll have regened a little bit of health and probably have regened about all of the damage that was hit with that first shot.
That didn't down him. All good, that fight doesn't matter.
And I guess they didn't. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back and look at that again. Yeah, so that was like 45 or something. Yeah, that ended up being another. Yeah, so I guess there wasn't any regen situation. Interesting. So yeah, the 80% makes sense from the 2 shots. Oh, yeah, you have to miss 2 shots, right? Because it's 2.5. Right. Math bad.
Down him.
So you shot within the 0.5 margin, basically.
All good, that fight doesn't matter.
So yeah, next, already playing for it. Have short spawn here. It does make sense for the knee-jerk reaction to be to go try to help out teammates and win their fight, whatever they're doing. But there's also a consideration that needs to be made that you holding short here is really important, especially when the push towards this short area is really hard. If a player moves up through the stairs, there's a lot of open area. You can get damage on them, and potentially, if you have players here, they get pinched. And if they try to push across the top, into that area, you get a lot of free damage on them while you have cover wherever it is that you're holding. So yeah, moving up here, and then as soon as you recognize that they get a kill, then you'd more seriously consider moving back to try to keep short. But as you're moving up, there's obviously, more conflict that, entire time. But now it's starting to stalemate a little bit. So again, you want to seriously consider going back to make sure you hold short, or at least holding TACCOM and then seeing what's going on with teammates around you. But yeah, now they start moving up, but you're ready with the Lancer as you're moving back. So this is pretty good. Yeah, that was unfortunate. Got a headshot on one of the players around the hill. Yeah, this is a tricky situation. You have a really good angle on players who are moving up as they're trying to push. But then also, it's arguably more important to keep short spawn. But it's, this is a pretty tricky situation. But whichever decision is made, you kind of need to. I mean, you can kind of half commit, I guess, by like holding that angle around where the block is, and backing up, and then every time you don't have an angle anymore on a player, you do a back roll to get much closer to the short spawn. This is sort of like a half committal thing. They're stunned, so you did want to make sure while they absolutely had more players here to try to push your advantage in that small window while you're in this area to try to get the kill, even if there was a trade. And they're all playing together and getting revives. Yeah, no, they're playing the back.
No, I'm getting fucking cold, bro.
But even in this situation, my knee-jerk is to try to play up either through here if it feels like it's safe enough, because it wouldn't feel too good to give up all the time that it's required to go all the way around when they shouldn't have very many players holding that right hand at the top of the stairs. Yeah, so two players that died, TACCOM'd, and basically you should just understand they have short, and they should absolutely have an angle on this doorway at this point, even if it's just one player. But there should be one player here that's blocking, and you can't make that push up through here because you're probably going to get at least 2v1s. Even in the 1v1 situation is really bad push. So you either consider going around here and sitting and waiting, or cutting up through here. And right now with TACCOM, you see that there's 17 seconds on the M bar. And if you were going to make a push on short up here, you would want to try to start doing so through this top right now. If you're in the front, if you had like two players, that would still probably be problematic here because they have, a pinch from hill and from short basically. But you could consider trying to push with two players here, but it's probably still bad. But right now, if you can make it up here and then prevent them from getting over to M bar, they don't have enough time. By the time the M bar comes up to win the game or whatever, you still have plenty of time to work with, and you can, get the M bar. Then not only are you trying to play for short by going up this way and trying to prevent them from getting that rotation, or doing like the half measure thing where the player that's holding short ends up moving in between to try to get an angle on right hand on the stairs. If you can beat them to that spot before they get there, you have a much better chance at pushing this player away so that they feel like they have to give up the M bar pickup, or they fly forward and then maybe you'll have a man advantage or something. But there's only so much map space that they can be playing for because they have hill control, right? So this is definitely, in this moment, what makes the most sense to be playing for. And it does suck, but it's like really hard to try to push and retake from the one side, especially when you're down players for so long. So if you end up going it to like the bottom of the stairs or even anything remotely close to that, they could easily just like 4v2 push or 3v2 push. If, you know, they should be holding short that entire time. Would absolutely not be considering this at all, at all, at all. And not even waiting to see if anyone's going to cut through here. There's no point. You're just like super hopeful. You can be proactive here. But as soon as this happens and you're around this area, then yeah, you should be flying to go try to like get this kill. Yeah, and this is like pretty aggressive. This is like still dicey, but at least putting yourself in a position to try to keep them from being able to get out without having a teammate come and help them. This still makes some sense to do, of course. Every split second that goes by where you're either taking damage or not taking damage from across makes a really big impact on the decision making for you right now. But yeah, I definitely agree that you want to be putting pressure on this player that's moving forward because they're overextending for sure here. Yeah, ended up sort of baiting another teammate to come down. So now you have a legitimate window. If teammates move up fast enough and you're able to stay alive long enough, a legitimate window to maybe even get another kill from this. Yeah, and so you end up double downing here. We have teammates here. We ended up getting drop shot, but they ended up getting M-bar off respawn. I was assuming Reimato was probably holding short. Got 2 kills. There's one more on Hill, so you only know there's one player there now. Yeah, so this is pretty decent. And now you want to be playing forward to try to make sure that you block the short spawn up there. Both of the major power weapons were picked up, but even if they're only like, I don't know, 12, 15 seconds, maybe less than maybe 8 seconds on nades here, this is absolutely not as worth playing for as it would be to try to grab the map space back of where short is up there while you have hill control and they have players who are kind of dead. It's going to try to prioritize spawning them in that corner, but if you move enough players up soon enough, not only do you might have a look at putting pressure on the M-bar, but you also have a pretty good chance at blocking that spawn up there. And that's where you'd want to be rotating to try to retake where next is, which is M-bar. So all of this is like out of what I would consider to be a spot in the map that anyone should be on. I don't think anyone on this, anyone in the game actually should be around here at all. They should be cutting up like through the middle to set up for next, or be on the top area somewhere, and be just moving, like just be away, or try to be holding that short spawn for the current hill, because it's also next to where next is. Yeah, there's nothing helpful going on anywhere, anything around here at all. This player is putting themselves out of where of anything important happening on the map as well. I mean, unless you really care about nades that much, which potentially you could if they're already like super set up over there. But that's kind of like a secondary consideration. If they're super set up there and you don't have any looks for picks at all, while you have a player advantage or player's advantage, depending on what's going on, then you could consider putting pressure on the nades here. But all of this, for the most part, is kind of outside of any aspects of the map that's that important right now. Yeah, and you're not even really waiting for frags, even though I think they're pretty close to actually being up at this point. But if you're up over here, you also might have been able to keep your teammate alive up there. But this entire push and sitting anywhere around this area was all like, I mean, this push is bad, and sitting here is like mostly a waste of time. I mean, you could be keeping them from getting frags, but like actually sitting here for that amount of time and then waiting for frags is not worth it. And now you both feel like you need to push forward or something. You're kind of like chained to Goggles, who Goggles has been putting themselves in really bad positions the entire game. And really should have a Lancer out here, because as soon as you see any players on the top of the stairs at all, you get way more damage with the Lancer than you would with like a shotgun or anything. So there's no reason to have, I mean, same with Shadow. There's not much of a reason to have a shotgun out. If they feel like they saw a player that's on this corner that's like closer, then there's more of a reason for them to have a shotgun out. But they'd also get a lot more damage with a Lancer if that player up-A'd down the stairs towards them than they would with a shotgun. So now you're both in like a super, super bad position because you were like holding a place that didn't make any sense, and you're going to try to push up a direction that's really bad to push from, because pushing uphill from here is super bad. You have extremely strong positions at the halfway mark on these stairs towards the bottom here, and even at the top of the stairs you have lots of really good angles from the very top to this area that's at the middle of the stairway as well. Yeah. So again, we're, and I try to play for nades, as I felt like that was the best thing to do, because teammates were dead. I think was a lot of that consideration, try to keep them from getting frags. If I was able to make it close enough to frags before they picked them, I also might be able to get a pick from that as well, which is pretty important. But if we were all four there like a long, long time ago, we might have been able to get a really good look at a push before any of this kind of happens. And then if I win this area, which I'm also trying to put myself in a position where I have looks to get drop shot kills, which makes a lot more sense to play for the middle of the map if that's the case. I mean, if they set up aggressively here on this side, or I mean, I shouldn't assume players are going to be on the other side of the hill. I should assume they're going to be either around the hill or at the bottom of these baby stairs or this area. If they're around that area, then from the bottom of the stairs through the middle here, I could potentially get some decent damage. But I have very little interest in pushing forward until a large amount of our team is actually pushing here when we have an advantage, which is really when that's going to happen. And only when those two requirements are met do I feel like I'll have enough space to actually move up from the bottom of the building here. Otherwise, if I have like power weapon or something, then getting a different angle or a different look or trying to kill, frag pickup with drop shot or whatever is another set of decisions that I could be making. And I think that's kind of what happened here. I'm trying to make a play while we're sort of dead. But yeah, I still have absolutely no intention of moving up here on my own when we have no space here and a lot of the players around the hill can be looking at me and I know I'm by myself. So all I'm doing right here with drop is like looking for marks, my own marks or teammate marks, and trying to get picks to give us an opportunity to push forward. And I'm also heavily prioritizing the M-bar player with drop, which I end up getting a kill on. So that was actually really big. Yeah, unfortunate. Died a frag. Do end up killing M-bar. It looks like they backpacked M-bar. So both of the main pickups are off the map, and one frag at least was used. And now you should just assume that you're by yourself. So pushing up is a little bit tricky. I would want to consider trying to pinch this player, kind of help reloads, but this is sort of like moving forward, getting damage with like a Lancer or whatever as you're moving forward and seeing what opportunities you have. But being a little bit careful because you could easily get double teamed at a moment's notice. Yeah, it sucked that the first flesh sucked. Sort of. All right, so now you have two teammates here, but now they have control of the middle part of this. So pushing forward, especially when hurt, is not an option that you have realistically because they have two angles at this point for this main push. And now they're really pushing that advantage now because they won the inside. But of course, we don't have an option of like sitting there for the rest of the hill. And I feel like I need to, we kind of need to try to make something happen right now. Don't really have time for a player to try to flank around somewhere either, because going down the stairs is pretty bad, especially if they're by themselves. So this push starts looking a lot more problematic. If we were all super coordinated, then we'd want to be very much together and play wide right here, try to win or take all the right-hand advantage fights and win the side of the map. But I'm sort of like looking to try to get damage on anyone that I can that's around me, and I felt like I could get I have a much better opportunity of trying to get a pick on anyone that's on this left side. Yeah, and Mario ended up using his other frag here to prevent us from trying to push and kind of get these kills, and they clutched together to get revives. So that was good for them. And unfortunately, our player here ended up going down. So at this moment, the game pretty much looks over. Like there's only one more push that can happen. And of course, we can probably prevent at least 1 second on this hill. So the game doesn't end on this hill. And want to make sure that we out-rotate them for next hill. But there's basically only like maybe, I guess, because I don't win with this hill, there's only like 2 more fights potentially that could happen. Yeah, so this is the nade. 71% was the nade, and then you end up shot with a shotgun. It was a really good preventative nade. And now they're sort of looking like they're doing the rotate. It's a little bit earlier. I mean, they're not necessarily doing that. It looks like they're probably split up. But as long as they have that space, they might have... they might be faster rotating to next. But technically, as long as, we don't get a touch, they do win with this hill. So it does make sense to look to see if they can... I mean, we're forced to heavily prioritize the current hill because they win with this, unless we get a touch. So they can get a lot of damage on us from multiple angles. But if we start like retaking and getting kills or whatever, they also have the ability, because they're spread out some, to be further away from the hill, because they're not as pressured to fight for all of the points on this hill like we are. We're heavily pressured to at least get a touch. So we have to make sure that that happens to extend the game. Yeah, getting a flash. Yeah, so this is basically the main push vector in this situation. You have lots of cover to make it over to the T. This isn't as helpful for the team. Yes, they're getting damage, but unless they're like around this area, even if they're on the right hand here, if they just back up around the corner, you can push them off that right hand and off that cross angle. But then as soon as that happens, you'd want to go straight back to helping teammates and trying to get revives and try to coordinate shooting the same players, because we're going to be at a huge disadvantage actually making a push instead of trying to take a slightly advantageous fight against someone who's crossing the rest of the team here. Because they could very easily just like roll literally right now away and then just start running away. And there's realistically no way to kill them. And that would have put you outside of the team fight where things matter a little bit more actually on the hill. Yeah, I ended up making a really weird decision to like stay here and try to fight. But even if you win this fight, it's like you took a 1v when the rest of the team was taking a disadvantageous like 3v3. I was thinking about getting a shot on that player and then getting the meat shield after you get the shot. Do get enough of a touch to deny that hill, and then some of us ended up spawning around that area, I think, before it ended up hitting next. As soon as the next symbol comes up, it blocks spawns on that. And when a current hill is at like 10 points or less, there's a much higher chance of players being able to spawn on it, but there aren't really spawns there. They're only on the shock or their bull talk in between. So yeah, looking at this spread, the COG team is split right now. And so, you know, Jasutin was the last player on the last hill when you fought them last. But you know, there's like, well, you should know there's a really good chance that they'd get spawns up here in this corner, because this is the priority spawn unless it's blocked. So even though they were by themselves, I think you just assume that there should be like at least one more player over here. But either way, you're kind of in a position right now to pick a side, and then you have to hard commit onto it. Even if it's like crossing to get good damage before you move up, not like straight lining from the back, but yeah, you want to be playing aggressively or proactively to try to win a fight on one of the sides. And right now, one side that is worth a little bit more because drop shot is somewhat close to being up is over here. So winning this can make a little bit more sense. But also this side does have short spawn, which is really, really important. It's also much easier to retake the hill from the short spawn side because there are two angles that they can push from. They can push from directly from the shock to next, and they can go around the back of next and go wide, have that like double angle. So the success rate from trying to retake from short spawn for this hill is way, way higher than directly straight up from here because they're at a low ground, and also it's kind of only one lane. It's basically only one lane. So as you're moving up, you're like looking for numbers and trying to prioritize which side makes the most sense to play for, depending on where the players are and where it looks like players are most damaged. So you know there are at least two players in this side. Trying to get initial damage on one of them. This is totally fine. But you know there are at least two players here, and you know there's a kill, so there is one less player on the right side. So you could consider being here and hoping that the rest of the team is going to make a play up to try to like 2v1 or something and try to get short spawn. And if that happens, then being here is really good because you might have some pretty good angles to at least get a lot of damage on the players that are trying to wait for drop. But you also have to be very cognizant of where their numbers are, because you know you're very much by yourself here in the middle of the map when the rest of the team is on the side of the map. You saw there were only 15 seconds left on the drop shot. We got that kill, and then we ended up getting a trade. You knew this fight was happening up there where short spawn is. This is, I mean, this would not be my first reaction to kind of like straight line this player when there are two players here. I'd try to get damage on them and kind of leverage the crossing damage that they have from the hill, and probably play up on this wide here, try to get damage on the bear and force the other player to come up, and then try to use your angles while trying to pay attention to where this player, Mario, would spawn, basically, because they're probably going to spawn across the bottom here, but if they don't and they spawn up top, then you actually have a lot more time to like work this fight. And if you end up winning this fight and end up getting drop, and we're able to hold hill, then drop could potentially defend against 2 full pushes and actually kind of evens up the game. So this is actually like a really important situation right now. And I think if you had a really good look at a push, maybe straight lining could make a lot more sense. I feel confident about it, but from the information that I have when I'm watching this video, it's like I'm assuming I'm going to take some damage from this, and then I'm going to get like super hurt from this player, even though they might be a little bit hurt from the cross. But if I can play an angle, I might give myself a much better chance of like winning this fight, and then maybe I'll have a teammate come help me from the hill, because that would make a lot of sense to do, because they'd have the space to come down and try to help out with this fight when it drops pretty soon coming up. Yeah, so that was good. So they ended up being a lot more hurt than I originally thought, but it's still like a little bit tricky. I still think playing that left side and then looking over, even with a shotgun, would have been much safer than playing forward like that, because they could have gotten like a 3-point shot and then up against the cover, not really taking damage from getting crossed, and then have played forward for like an up A, another brick, and then maybe the Lonnie could have helped them as well. But yeah, that's huge, and now you have like two kind of slight angles on this player that's by themselves, so you should just also assume that they're going to feel pressured to be playing forward on you. The default playing covers like this box is holding the left side for your back A on their right hand, and then if they start moving over to the right side, then you can easily make the adjustment to go over to the right hand and slide to it to be ready for a back A if they get into gib range from that side as well. So you just default the left side, or you're not really in position to hold the left side right now, and they end up playing their right hand here and just kind of give up this angle. And if you're able to hold this as well and they play up on the square, they also can take crossing damage while they're sitting on that. So instead, it ended up playing a bit safer and going to the right side. It didn't give yourself a look for the one-shot back A, or even potentially even an up A, if they end up moving around the left side here. Yeah, so you did exactly what that was, or what I was just talking about. So you wanted to stay up, that's fine. Then you default to holding left hand. So if they move up left, you already have your character ready for that. And if they move right, you can easily get to the right side before they're able to make it to that corner. But you have to be kind of quick about it. So you see that they're set up on the corner, and as soon as that happens, you're like, okay, I'm ready for these inputs. And you get to the right hand, you get the back A. That was big. Yeah, and then this player had like pushed down to try to like help out, because they had time for that, which is good. It was good on that player. So now we have the bottom spawn, so they have top spawn, but we should be getting dropped in like 3 seconds or less. And we should be kind of rotating to the side as long as kind of know where the numbers are. If they're like directly ready to make a push on the hill, again, like the very beginning of the game, you need to be in positions to prevent them from sort of doing that. But also in this situation, we have a little bit more flexibility, so the player with drop shot can prevent pushes while they're at like the bottom of the stairs here, and they can take like no damage from them pushing on the other side while they're holding kind of the bottom of the stairs. So they kind of want to be on the other side of where the other team is. So I'm kind of assuming that if they end up making any pushes forward here, that we could end up using one drop and have some angles to prevent them from moving up some. I'm trying to be a little bit more proactive. And also if the player who picks up M-bar moves up here, I might have a chance at trying to play them. So I think that's part what's going on there, but I noticed there's a lot of enemy presence on around here, so I kind of want to hold this because it's very strong to hold like around this T cover. Yeah, so they ended up actually having 3 players, like just not even interested at all of like playing the hill. So we have a pretty large numbers advantage over there. So it's good that they, I guess, got the down, probably the kill. They were all interested in trying to play for nades. So yeah, I guess I understand even more like why I was trying to prevent them from getting that. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on them because they have a pickup still. In addition to Embar, so I'm really interested in trying to kill them. But I also need to be aware that if I don't end up getting the block, then I need to be able to get out and not die if I can't get close to them to block that spawn fast enough. And I guess I couldn't, so I end up back rolling. And now I know I can't really play that anymore, so I would be rotating the hill. And Flexys is now sort of trying to play like this flank again, where he's kind of like away from teammates, but trying to get like, you know, a different angle. And it's not really the worst thing here, but once again, if they decide that they want to try to take a 2v1 or 3v1 really quickly, they could probably do so and have a really good chance at getting a kill on them. And then be able to make a push before he gets over there from the bottom spawn. Yeah, that's a pretty big kill. It's a really big kill. We don't win with this. We know they are still getting that spawn. And it looks like they probably got a split spawn. Yeah, that ended up happening. They felt like he couldn't leave, or I mean, it was getting crossed in the back, I guess, but it's kind of tricky. As soon as you realize you're in a pinch, you're pretty much immediately either thinking about straight lining someone or leaving to try to stay alive. Basically, it's kind of one of those two decisions. There's really not much in between. So if you are getting pinched and you kind of sit there, you're kind of losing more value than you should otherwise. So we sort of made it to next before. I think I'm on next and got a kill. Yeah, I end up being on next. They end up getting there, rotating there sooner, faster than we did. You know, at least 2 players are on next. Unfortunate flashes. We don't have a whole lot of time to work with, but we do actually have some time before we make a move. This push is pretty bad. For a push like this where we're like pretty staggered, you kind of want to wait till like 98, maybe 99, before you kind of are able to get into the hill. And of course, you don't want to like straight line, so there's a really good chance that you get down before you get a touch. But if you can get into the hill and go down at like 98 or 99, that gives the rest of your team the most amount of time possible that they need to, to push, obviously, instead of doing it like, at 93 or whatever, and then you're much more likely to be on your own and not have help. You're not giving your team more time to try to coordinate. So now we're all sort of split. So we each get like team shot, basically. Shadow goes down by himself and dies. The next player goes in, gets team shot, and goes down. They're a little bit further, but we still had some time to play with. It's, it's still 94. But as long as people keep going in and staggering like one at a time when there's no real need to, or not at 98 or 99, you're kind of like, unless you have a really good chance at like getting a kill or something and holding for a little bit longer because you have an opportunity, Basically, while they're set up, you want to wait for about as long as you can. So we're all kind of together now, but they're also all sorted together as well. You have a mark here, you see 2 players here, and then there's 1 player here. So these 3 are really close together, and this player is close. So our only chance of really winning this right now is to, because we're not like in a stack, to be focused, just hopefully are focusing the same players and having really good damage that's also mostly on the same page with each other. I can't really coordinate that much. Obviously, what makes the most sense is to shoot the players who are closest to you so you can deal the most damage to them and prevent them from dealing a lot of damage to you at the same time. So we would hopefully be focus targeting, especially when the Dom is actually is the furthest from the rest of the other players. So we would obviously very much want to be shooting to down the Dom, and as soon as the Dom goes down, we swap focus targets to the next player who's next closest, and then we'd be kind of moving forward towards the Dom so that if someone on the other team moves up towards the Dom to try to get a revive, we down them because they're obviously the next highest priority target because they're close to getting a revive. Plus, if you don't kill them, if we're able to get up to where the Dom is downed, then we might be able to get a shoot and then meat shield, which might buy a little bit more time as well if they spend shots on the meat shield instead of other players. And then because you can drop the meat shield instantly and get a revive, even if the meat shield eats 1 shot, that can be like the difference between winning and losing an entire fight. But basically, it's like staying together, getting the revives, and then trying to win the give fights on whoever the focus target is. So you end up kind of shooting the Dom. The Dom moves off to the side, and then they do get downed. But then, they have more damage, more team damage. So yeah, there's realistically only so much you could do. In a 3v4, Shadow should have waited a little bit longer. We actually might have been able to retake that, actually. If Shadow wasn't as split from us, would have given us a much better look at winning that fight, even though we were completely down a player at kind of the beginning of that 3v4 fight. But, yeah. So that was... The rest of it was pretty decent. I think without Shadow, just ended up being like way down in damage. That's okay. Yeah. So this ended up being the longest analysis thing I've done of any singular map, I guess. But yeah, it was a pretty good game. I think I pointed out a lot. I don't think there was anything that I'm like missing too much. I mean, like I said at the beginning, they're obviously going to be closer together on average because they're playing in a stack. I'm going to get a lot more revives. And of course, that plays in the decision making because they have some pretty big advantages in those ways. Pretty unfortunate the Shadow was, for the vast majority of the game, kind of putting themselves in situations that are like really far away from other players. TACOM definitely wasn't used anywhere near as much as I would have liked. There's a lot of information that I didn't necessarily have my first time watching this. Yeah, it's a little bit harder to see all of the stats, I guess, because Reloids quit to not get a loss on their record before the end of the game. It was really stupid, but yeah, that's what that is. Then I'll cover the second map shortly. So yeah, I guess if anyone watches this all the way through or whatever and has any suggestions, I'm super happy about them. I think a lot of future kind of analysis videos might be a little bit shorter because I'm kind of gonna assume that people who are watching these are gonna watch kind of from the beginning. So I won't have to talk about certain pushes being better as much on like the same maps or whatever. Not explaining certain concepts as much. Yeah, but yeah, let me know. Comment if you have any thoughts, concerns, criticisms, whatever. But yeah, all right. I'll end this with that one.